Did you know that all explosives in DayZ do maximum damage to base building structures if detonated within 5 meters? It doesn't matter which explosive it is, if you go beyond this 5 meters, the amount of damage an explosion will do will drop off significantly, but if you're inside this 5 meters, it doesn't matter where it's positioned. Strangely enough, this 5 meter radius of maximum damage also penetrates base building objects too, and damages every item beyond these base building objects because the wooden frame here takes maximum damage at 5 meters too. This means that if you would detonate a grenade on this side 4 meters away, it would do 1000 damage to the wooden frame here, or if you do it on this side, it would do 1000 damage too. So it doesn't matter which side you put it on. This applies to the panels that are dependent on these frames too, but the strangest part of all of this is that this explosive damage penetrates multiple layers at once and damages the first panel and the frame just as much as the last one shown here. Now against firearms such as the Vega, stacking walls is a good idea because no firearm in DayZ can penetrate these walls and therefore must damage one layer at a time in order to get through your base. But against explosives, these panels here are a complete waste of time for you to build unless you use the correct building technique of how to layer a base that a player called Lunchmeat discovered recently. If you stack your walls like this, explosive damage can penetrate and do full damage to all of the layers here, but if you space them 50 centimeters apart, for whatever reason, the second layer here does not take damage. A good trick for spacing them out 50 centimeters apart is using a fence kit, so use a fence kit to build the first layer. When you get that fence kit back, stand against the wall and then drop it at your feet. This will give you a gap big enough to build the second layer. This will give you just over 50 centimeters of spacing to place the next fence kit and stops explosive damage entirely from damaging the second wall, and this also stops any form of damage from getting through. Due to this discovery, nobody should be stacking walls like this anymore and instead should space their walls at least 50 centimeters apart unless you know for sure that your enemy only has firearms, which is going to be extremely unlikely. Grenades are not really that rare. So instead of 12 grenades destroying these two walls in your base, it will now require 24 grenades using this spacing technique here, slowing your attackers and saving you time on resource collection because you don't need to build a crazy amount of walls anymore. You can just space them 50 centimeters apart with this spacing trick working against all of the explosives in DayZ. However, it's important to be aware that this is not the way that explosive damage works against players. Explosive damage versus base building objects appears to be a special form of damage, as explosive damage can barely pass through any object in DayZ, even bushes, so it cannot pass through these base building objects unless there's a gap underneath your base. To summarize explosive damage versus base building objects then, all explosives do maximum damage to bases up to 5 meters, with that damage passing through 50 centimeters if it interacts with a base building object to damage all other items and base building objects on the other side, but it cannot damage players inside this 50 centimeters, as explosive damage versus players works differently.